I've been a physical therapist for 38 years. That's crazy. And the program that I went to was really heavy in neurology, and I just got so fascinated by the brain. And then worked in neuro rehab for a number of years after I finished physical therapy school. So that kind of was a beginning for me, just like how much our brain controls our reality in ways that I had no concept of before. Um, and then about 5 years after I finished physical therapy school, I started studying with osteopaths. And that work is so informs the way I understand healing. So osteopathic work is about orienting to what they call the fluid field or the original matrix, which is life force that we all exist inside of. So there is this boundless field of resource that we're part of. And osteopathic work, at least the teachers I've worked with, is rooted in effortlessness and in systems theory. Is we are a set of dynamically interacting systems, but inside of a much greater system that is full of resource. And so osteopathic work, if you've had that kind of work, is very light. There's no force. It's really just connecting resource to places in the system that need resource. And that's very much also in brain retraining and neuroplasticity work, is that we bring what was missing, what um, wasn't there, so that our experience could be digested and integrated in the moment of the experience. We light that up, and then we bring that resource, that care, that compassion, that attunement to the felt experience of emotion. And we'll talk about what emotion is later, and I want to hear from you all, like your experience of emotion. So anyway, osteopathy has been a huge influence in my work and really informs everything that I do. My first teacher, John Upledger, he talked about what we were doing in this work as healing. He called them energy cysts, which you can also think of as emotion that's gotten held in the body. So emotion, the word is amovere, like the root word, amovere, which means movement. It's for movement. Emotion is meant to move and complete a process. And in osteopathy, health equals our biological processes get to complete. And many of our processes don't get to complete. So that's this idea of there's energy or emotion that gets held in our system for a very good reason, and that impacts our well-being, our emotional well-being, our psychological well-being, our physical well-being, our spiritual well-being, our energetic well-being. um, so let's see, I started studying osteopathy in 93, and then in the early teens, I started to develop a lot of food sensitivities and started to lose some of my um, aerobic capacity. I had been a marathon runner, and I got to where I couldn't run more than 8 minutes without just hitting a wall and not really understanding what was going on. Um, I got some wonderful help treating my food sensitivity, so I was able to return to eating things. But about 6 years later, I went through a series of really big life stressors and developed what I now understand and probably had for years: fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, uh, pervasive digestive issues, really bad arthritis in my hands, brain fog, memory loss. It was pretty scary. And I wasn't functioning very well at all. I managed that for a few years on a autoimmune paleo, low FODMAP, very limited diet. And then I started talking to people about trauma and stress and health. And someone introduced me to brain retraining. That was in 2018. And it didn't make any sense to me at first, but I was desperate. And I started doing this techniques from the Gupta program. And within a year, my hot flashes went away in 2 weeks. So I knew I was on the right track. And within a year, all of my health conditions that I just named were gone. And I was on a plane to London, having not been able to travel for 3 years, to start my coach training with the Gupta program. And then that was like the beginning where it all just started being revealed of like, oh, what's really going on in the deep brain. So that's what we're going to talk about today is why emotion? Like, why are we talking about emotion? What does this have to do with health? Like when naming that emotion is meant to move, that it has a purpose and a function, and that anytime that that does not get to move, there is another wisdom that's functioning in our system, especially in our early years, when to feel the intensity of the sensory experience of the emotion would have overwhelmed us or our caregivers, would have ruptured our connection because we're dependent on that connection with our caregivers for survival, then our nervous system can learn that our own emotional experience is a threat to our well-being. And there's no conscious process here. We're talking about the deep brain, which is the subconscious brain, which does all the things we don't have to think about. Like we're digesting food right now. We're producing blood cells. We're producing, all kind endocrine. We're doing all kinds of things, but we don't have to think about it. So this is all happening subconsciously, that our deep brain is helping us survive. We may not understand why, but that we can meet whatever the experience is with kindness and with gratitude. Like, thank you for helping me. Like they're seeing the wisdom, feeling the wisdom in that, even if it's, I don't know what I'm feeling. And that was me. I remember, my Zen teacher in the late 90s assigning us that. Like she wanted us to notice through the day what we were feeling. And I was totally blown away. I was like, I have no idea what I'm feeling. I'm just fine. Like, I'm okay. What do you mean? Like, what is this? So, but this is wisdom, right? This is how I survived in an environment that didn't speak emotion and didn't have a capacity to respond to that. So that was better for my nervous system to not like have a connection or a relationship to that. This is also, I didn't name it, another really important part of the way that I carry this work is my teacher, Thomas Hubel, who some of you may know or know of. He works in healing collective trauma and as relationship as a medium for healing. And I'm in the middle of a 2-year training with him. He's been a teacher of mine for about 7 years. And in that work, and mostly in osteopathy, there is no mistake. Like there's wisdom in everything, and we receive it and enter relationship with that. So let's see from you all in the chat what you think about emotion. What is emotion? Like, what is emotion to you? If you had to say what emotion is, like if I was from Mars and I was like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what that word is. What would you, and if there's something that comes into your awareness, you can just type that in the chat. Or what are emotions? What is that? Is an emotion? You may not even have an answer, but it's helpful just to be like, yeah, what? When I think of an emotion or what is that? You can just type in the chat if you have something. I think this is in part for the recording. So everybody gets to have their anonymity. Some kind of nervous system response with feeling impacts. Best and worst experiences, right? So there's something very experiential about emotion that has a quality to it. Yeah. It has an intensity. Yeah. Can have emotions can be very intense, right? And this is I think this is kind of points us to that emotions, part of the function of emotion is I'm going to read you a definition about emotions. Complex, temporary, yeah, feelings, physiological and psychological responses to internal or external events that signify personally relevant situations. Something important is happening. It involves what's called neuroception. So all this information is coming up to our insula and amygdala. This is our deep brain. We'll look at an image of the deep brain in a minute. Below consciousness, like all this is coming in all at once. You've probably had this where you just felt fear in an instant or something in an instant, and you're like, I don't even know, wait, what's happening? Like our body, it's all happening faster than our conscious mind can like put it all together. So there's this input of stimulus, and then it gets filtered through our deep brain. And this is why people can have very different emotional responses to the same stimulus. Like someone can hear something and be curious, and someone else can hear it and be terrified and have a physiological reaction that starts right away of heart pounding or flinching. Or somebody else might hear that same sound, like if it's a loud train horn and they grew up on trains and they love trains and they just may feel joy, right? So in our deep brain is where that filtering happens, where it's like this. Before we have time to think, yeah, so the feeling, the physiological, right? The intake of that filtered through our previous experience. And this is, it's tricky. Let's not go there yet. It gets a little too complicated. But then, so here's the three key components. This is that same definition. A subjective experience, how we feel. Several people have written this, and feelings. Physiological response, changes in our bodily function. We may start to sweat. We may smile. We may start laughing. Our gut might clench. Our heart might expand. You know, it depends on what the stimulus is. So there's a bodily change and a behavioral or expressive response. Some expression, the laughter, or some action. If it's that we see something falling, before we even know what we're doing, we may do this and then push something away. So in there is an emotion, fear, probably for that one. And then there's some kind of expression. So there can be a bodily expression. There can be more subtle expressions. Now, if we go back to that idea in osteopathy of health equals the completion of a biological process, if you've read Peter Levine's work, which some of you may have, he talks about this, is that if something happens, like if something is falling on me and I can respond and act, that completes the process. I have protected myself, and that's the completion of that process. Sometimes, especially when we're young and our conditioning is happening, and because of how vulnerable we are when our nervous systems are young and we're dependent on the humans in our environment to survive, we may feel a fear or an anger or a sadness, even that has a different response, and not take any action. See how that lands in you. Like if your body knows about that, something scary might have happened, and I didn't get to fight or change it or run away from it. And just notice how you feel if you have like any lived experience of that. Anybody get some kind of physical or subtle experience? It might be in your recent adult life that you were upset with someone, or you felt a caring or a desire to make a connection and then not complete that. And just notice what you feel in your body. I'm curious, and we can put this in the chat again, just so that we can have the recording be so everyone has their privacy. The chat won't go out. Um, what's the quality here when you feel this experience of, yeah, I felt that communication of not okay, or mhm. And just see right now what it feels like in the body. Like, is there a quality? Is there movement? Is there like a weight or a lightness or a just to be curious? And this is part of this work is learning to learning the language of emotion in the body. What is this feeling? Yeah, a tightness. Yeah, feeling a tightness and a not moving, a nausea. Mm-hmm. Weight. Right. So this is not movement, right? This is emotion that's not getting to complete its biological process. This is what Dr. Upledger would call an energy cyst, right? We call this emotion, emotion that hasn't gotten to move. My teacher Thomas would say, because there weren't the resources to feel this, and that resource is usually attunement, like someone, and this is often what didn't happen and can't happen consistently when our nervous system is developing. But if it's repetitive, that for someone to see us and see, oh, you're scared, and then to be available to be with us, to help digest that and to name it with us. That was scary, right? I can be with you. And then our body will shake or will cry or whatever that movement is of the fear that needs to happen. And then we come back to, huh, we call regulation, that has gotten to move. So Thomas would say when those causes and conditions aren't there, that this packet of information goes into cold storage somewhere in the body. It has to get held for another time when there are the causes and conditions in which this can be touched with awareness and then experienced when there is enough uh, resource. Does somebody want to define resource? I realize I say that word a lot. What is a resource? Anybody have that? Want to put that in the chat? What or what your sense is of a resource? what the function of a resource is. Hmm? Support. Yeah, something we can tap into. The function is, yeah, connection within or outside to help nourishment. Right. So a resource is something, I'm trying to remember whose definition this is, and I can't remember, so I won't say. Um, Something that brings us into connection with ourselves, like that we can come down here. For some of us, that's like being in the forest, someone that can see us and sense us, and we can feel like, oh, you don't need me to be any different. I can be with what's here right now, and that's not going to threaten our okayness together. Like there's enough digestive juices or enough anchoring or presence that whatever's here can be here. So that could be a connection with spirit. It could be anything, but it's the function is that it gives me a sense that I can be here more. Yeah. Okay. Thoughts and questions, anything? I have a couple slides and of course more. There's so much, but let's hear. I'll pause the recording to see if there's anything that wants to be heard. Okay. Okay. So we were just talking about resource and kind of taking a pulse on where we are, following the pace of our process, and noticing that we all live in a culture where we're asked to override our biological pace or the pace of our process. And maybe that can be a source of compassion for us. I often tell people this is not a personal problem, even though it's very personal to us. This is a cultural problem. We have disconnected from our felt experience. And that's a whole nother talk about how we see the symptoms of that everywhere. So I'm going to share a couple of images. One is like a very not detailed, but it'll give you an orientation to our deep brain and why emotion and connection matter so much. This is from a website called Knowing Neurons. It's an infographic about uh, fear and healing fear. Yeah. So this is our prefrontal cortex, which when we practice mindfulness or meditation, can perceive these signals from our deep brain or our limbic system, and then modify our response to that, or be a loving, attuned, mirroring presence to the emotion that is arrives here. So this is, I mean, this is all very simplified, but our gray matter are more of our cognitive functions that we have some conscious awareness of. That's not completely true, but our deep brain, this is our more primitive brain, and this is our even more primitive brain stem. But the amygdala and the hippocampus and the hypothalamus and the insula, these structures here, but particularly this little red thing right here, which is, I don't know if you can see me, it's kind of in from our temples. We have one on each side, our amygdala, amygdalae, what the plural is. This is where the cells in here have been named fear neurons and safety neurons. And what happens, they get conditioned in our early development And the information that's coming up from the body, the physical and internal experience, um, it has a learned uh, reflex that develops in the amygdala. So we might experience like hearing footsteps or sensing the presence of another. If that other is a threat to our well-being, then those kind of sounds in our amygdala become conditioned in a fear neuron. Like then there's just this reflexive, I hear a footstep and my body tenses up. Um, Someone that had an experience of connection and warmth with that same stimulus. Oh, good, mom's coming, she's going to feed me, or whatever it is. I mean, there wouldn't be language at that early time. Then those sounds are a safety neuron, and they have a totally different physiology that then cascades through our system in response to that sound or physical experience. Does that make sense? Any questions here? The good news is these neurons, and that's what this research paper was about, um, can be reconditioned. So I'm trying to remember what they used. If it was a sound, it might have been like a buzzer or something that they used. Like they had some kind of noxious experience when that buzzer happened. And so they had these, like a fear response would happen in them when they heard this. When they were with a bonded other, or in our case, an attuned other. And the good news is this can be us if we learn to feel the fear and turn toward it with compassion. I feel you. Oh, you're scared. I'm right here. Oh, I get the sense, like stay with that felt experience. We come down instead of thinking, oh no, what's happening? What did I do? What do I have to do different? So often we go up into more thought, but what changes these neurons and our experience is this turning toward and creating safe, attuned connection with our felt experience. That's a very simplified, but it's a little bit about our deep brain and why emotion works, right? Because then there's fear, or maybe there's anger, or maybe there's sadness. So emotion is meant to help us either through protection or connection, right? So it's either I got to get out of here, or I got to push this thing, or move some or do something, or I need connection. I'm sad, I'm scared, and I need. This is why Homo sapiens, why we're here as a species, right? Because of our complex human relationships. There's some, I read this incredible article about why we survived as a species. And I was like, oh, that's why we're here. But then it gets confounded, right? If we've had, which in our culture, many of us do, repetitive experiences where to feel our emotions in and of itself can feel scary or like a threat, or like, and I need to just keep this down here. So we are at time. What I want to say is that this has been my journey to healing. And I understand more and more that developing more experiences and relationships of where emotion is not a threat and can be included, um, is part of what retrains or reconditions this deep part of our brain. And because of that, I have gotten really passionate about working in small groups with people where we're doing this together and we feel not alone in the process